So if you're not familiar with AIGA, we are the Professional Association for Design. And the great thing about AIGA is that we have a community in many different cities around the United States. And if you find yourself in one of these cities, you're immediately in a community of your own people, so that you can just like plug in and kind of hit the ground running and just meet an amazing community of creatives. The mission is to enhance the abilities of design educators and educational institutions to prepare future designers for excellence in design practice, design theory, and design writing at the undergraduate and grad levels while supporting the fundamentals missions of AIGA. Here at the DEC, we were established in 2004, and we support the unique activities and responsibilities of design educators at the undergrad and postgrad levels in a wide variety of institutional settings. And I will also say that includes K through 12. And our belief is that together we can do amazing things. That's why we try to get together as much as we can with events like this so we can share ideas, share thoughts, share our insights, and hopefully help each other out in growing as designers and educators. Some Zoom tips. It's been a few years since we've been using Zoom, so you probably all know this, but please try to stay muted by default to minimize distractions. Be mindful of what shows up in your camera frame. If you happen to have someone walking behind you, just keep that in mind. If you want to share a question, this is going to be a pretty open conversation, so you can raise your hand with a virtual hand. In some cases, you can unmute yourself, or like I said before, you can let one of us know from the DEC, and we can ask on your behalf. If you want to see any of our past events, please screenshot this URL. We try to record all our events and put them available for reviewing after the fact. So I'll give you a second to screen capture that. And I think if somebody can add it to the chat too, I think that's usually what happens. But and of course, connect with us as much as you can. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to extend these conversations past today's events. Okay. So I think that's it for me. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Alan to get us started. Alan.
Morning. Thank you so much, Victor. Welcome, everybody. So great to see you. Great to see some people who are actually at yesterday's conversation joining us again. We'll be able to pick up in some places where we left off. Definitely want to thank DEC, forever a fan. I've actually been on the national board of the AIGA. So if you want to ask me stories about that, we can just be in the chat, or maybe probably drinks and not coffee. So lots of stories and lots of really great experiences at AIGA. I want to particularly thank Lisa and Alberto. This whole thing started off with a conversation. I had talked to Sam Potts, who's joining us today, and then I had talked to Helen Armstrong, who said, you know, we really need to connect with the National DEC. We were thinking about trying to get together a group of people to come up with some sort of disclaimer statement, something like, you know, the work above was created with the assistance of generative AI. That statement may not make as much sense, even 3.5 weeks later, given that these tools are being built into, already into tools like Figma already, and certainly, you know, very, very sort of comprehensively soon into Adobe and every other kind of platform that there's going to be. So AI is obviously used a lot anyway, but now with full on, does it actually make sense to call out what's happening? We can talk about that a little bit today, but just to let you know that that was sort of the seed of how we got to this conversation. And the idea was to have at least 2 initial conversations at different times to help people to respect their time zone. So we're really, really happy that you're here. I would like to actually start with something that I do with students, which is to you know, encourage them to see if they can find out 2 things when they're meeting with people. There's certainly subject matter expert research, which is sort of what gets you up in the morning and what keeps you up at night. Sort of what are you excited about and what are you worried about? And so I thought, like yesterday, we would start and just open the floor to see if people can share. Definitely start with what you're excited about, but then don't be shy with what you're concerned about. We can guess at some of those concerns, but frankly, some of the conversation that came out yesterday was not so guessable. And as a final note, if you're comfortable turning on your camera, that's wonderful to be able to see you live. If you're not comfortable, we totally respect that, but absolutely have the invite to join us with video. Welcome, well, all over the world, actually. Scully, you're in France, so it's good to see you and good to see some friends here as well. So who'd like to start us off? Something you're excited about and maybe something you're worried about?
So Rick, it looks like you have your hand up if you want to get us started.
Okay, yeah. I'm keeping up at night. In fact, every night till about 4 a.m. doing Midjourney, honestly. I've become just obsessed. I now have clocked 650 hours and generated 24,000 images in 6 months. So it's a half-time job for me. You know,
so you're worried about your Midjourney addiction then? Is that the worry?
A little bit, but I've decided that I'm going to make it fruitful. So I'm making presentations on ethics. I'm making presentations on, you know, how-tos. I'm studying every YouTube video as how to make a character development design for a storyboarding thing. I'm using it in the classroom constantly. And you know, I'm keeping aware of like some of the playing devil's advocate with myself, but feeling like I did when I first learned Photoshop, feeling like I did when I first got a Macintosh and did desktop publishing, when I had a digital camera and when I got a phone, but times 10. It has been the biggest ideation station of my entire life. I've never felt more fruitful or creative ever. And that's why I'm staying up at night doing it. So anything I can do to kind of dispel the myths and the false information that's out there, anything that I can do to add to the positivity and help those Luddites make their way into the next generation. I do think this is about adapting, evolving, and innovating. And we have to do that in the classroom. I think my worry is that people that are commenting negatively about it haven't tried it yet. And if you're a creative person at all and you try it, I don't know about you all, but you're going to be addicted to. There's just no way.
That's a strong start. And Rick throwing down with the myths and misinformation. All right, who wants to jump in here?
I'll jump in. Hey guys, Natalie. I will say I have not introduced this into the classroom yet, really. I did use Chat GPT recently to write a creative brief for a student event that we held. It was all about creating these fantasy posters in 45 minutes. And I was like, I don't really know what to say. And so I literally typed creative brief for a fantasy rock show into Chat GPT, and in seconds it wrote this beautiful creative brief. So I thought for the event and the tone of the event, it made perfect sense. So I'm mesmerized by all of it. I have, you know, used some of the image engines here and there, but I'm excited to be here to learn how to properly integrate this into the classroom. I know last semester we visited an agency in Nashville who has built they're using their own proprietary software that they're running from, I can't remember what engine they're using, but they've built a software to essentially help generate ideas for their clients. And then they take what the AI does and they use that just as a springboard for opening up the creative conversation. And so I think that is the way that it makes sense for designers and design educators to use that. And not necessarily what keeps me up at night, because it does excite me and terrify me at the same time.
Mhm.
I'm cautiously optimistic about all of this, but I have traditional studio art colleagues that I think are very, very wary of it. So I'm excited to understand it more so that I can help them to better understand it more, because it's a conversation that we've already started having in our department, is like, how do we manage this? How do we, you know, a syllabus statement I know is something that everybody was really interested in. So yeah, that's why I'm here, and I'm overall excited, just generally curious.
Thanks so much, Natalie. I think your word mesmerized is really very like spot on. We see some conversations happening in the chat. We welcome that. I mean, and they also don't have to be the same conversation. If that's where you're comfortable, I think we can count on our moderators to port over questions and comments that make sense. But I'm all for having, like, you know, two conversations, different kinds of learners, different kinds of people who express themselves. I also want to remind people that closed captioning is on if that's helpful too. Mark, you have your hand up. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so one of the things that I find really exciting about it, and it's terrifying too, is that I was sort of telling my students that, I'm old. So when I started my career, it was with like X-Acto knives and rubber cement. Everything was done by hand, literally painstakingly done by hand. And so this is what I love about being a designer, is we always have an opportunity to learn something new. And so it's super exciting to learn about all this stuff. But I have to say, I'm concerned with my students in that it's also a way to limit curiosity. I think, it's like eating candy. It's like the quick, easy, super sexy output with one simple prompt. And that is where I get concerned that it's going to start to kind of, like eliminate their kind of curiosity and their push to move forward. I've seen that happen in some of the assignments that I've given. And so I'm just raising that as one of the things that really makes me concerned. As a creative professional, we're driven by curiosity. I also am very concerned about all those illustrators and photographers out there who are now going to be unemployed. And we as graphic designers are going to be taking their jobs away from them because we're using these tools. So that's something I think a lot about too, is like how we as graphic designers, the choices that we're making are going to impact others within our creative industries. It's going to happen, but I struggle with how that happens.
I hear two really, really important points there. One is around this idea of like, curiosity, deep looking, developing craft, sort of this idea of like the shortcut. And then the other is around sort of the threat, the sort of work displacement. Maybe can anyone here join on the sort of the craft sort of concern? Anyone have a similar sort of experience or fear or concern?
Being a photographer for over 50 years, I've seen our industry go completely apart. As a photojournalist for the Miami Herald for 15 years, I saw the staff dwindle to nothing, like literally working out of their bedrooms now and their cars. And there was a giant building and there were 64 photographers and we had a helicopter we could take anywhere we wanted to, whenever we wanted to. So I see also the proliferation of royalty-free images, impacting the work where it used to be rights managed. Someone in stock photography make a couple of $100,000 a year, and now you make 75 cents every time they sell a picture on Adobe. So it's going to disrupt everything. The figuring out, I think, that we should really concentrate on is figuring out it's going to happen whether we want it to or not. So how do we adapt and evolve and turn ourselves into educators of the future students that there's a lot loss of craft, but there was when we did, desktop publishing, when we've done photography, when we've done all, new kinds of illustration. I mean, the list of innovations in our lifetime is absolutely extraordinary. So I think that there's still the humanity, there's still the craft and the thought process of how to design. It's still intact. That we have to figure out a way. How do we manage to go around and do this in a brand new way? We have to reinvent ourselves as educators, because I think we're way behind the curve when it comes to even adopting. We have the same fears about Photoshop. Your imagination is going to go away, and photographers were all upset about that, and painters were upset when photography was invented. I mean, so this is an old story that we've gone over, and look to the past to figure out how do we evolve and deal with these new things. And they're happening so quickly. In 6 months, Midjourney went from 11 people to 11 million. A ChatGPT has 100 million people in 6 months' time. So it's done. It's a done deal. And we just got to figure out how do we manage it ethically, responsibly, and keeping in mind the idea of the human spirit can be told through a photograph made in a click of a button. It can be told through a prompt.
I want to come back to just the idea of teachers and sort of retraining, and also we need to spend some time on the ethics. Just a reminder to please use the hand raising built into Zoom. That's in the reactions menu down on the bottom. And I think Scully, I think you had something to contribute next. If you raise your hand, we can actually address them. It will keep the order. So that might be a nice way of getting in line.
Okay. Thank you, Alan, so much. Yeah, I don't know where the hand raising is. So I'm super excited to join this today. I just found out about it like 2 hours ago maximum. And so I feel like it's very on par with how fast everything is moving for me in terms of AI and Midjourney. So I'm like maybe 3 days into Midjourney. And I'm totally overwhelmed and really excited. Like I'm not staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning like Rick, but I definitely identified with a lot of what you're saying in terms of all of a sudden I was cleaning my atelier the other day and I had this random little paper maquette and I was like, I've never been able to figure out how to realize this. And I put it into Midjourney and I got, these new things. And so it's really this idea where the more that you're able to put out, the more that's able to be into your brain. So I don't find it, I was fearful of it. I don't know if I don't want to say that I was fearful of it before. I was cautiously open about it because I did early on make the analogy to photography and what people talked about photographers when that was a new medium out in the world in terms of a creative output. I was overwhelmed with the interface. I spent 2 hours with a very good friend of mine early in the week who's an amazing writer, and with her help, jockey. I was what's that?
A prompt jockey.
A prompt jockey, and I'm off and running. And so it was a few things for me that clicked in my brain really, really rapidly in terms of using this. Is that last week I was asked to be on a jury at a school in Paris, and it's not design, it's a luxury management school. So it's kids who are going to be art directors or creative directors. So it's much more about speaking and presentations. And so a lot of them are using Canva, right? So for me, Canva is already part of these things where you have built in ability to have a lot of design already done, going to like graphic design skills that maybe are not going to be utilized so much anymore. And at the end, I was speaking with the chair, the head of pedagogy, and I said something. I said, "Oh, I was actually kind of surprised that I didn't see any AI images from the students." And his brain like completely lit up. And so it really has started this conversation with us about like, he's like, it's too new. These kids, they were starting in October, this project and going forward. So he's just like, it's definitely for the next semester. So I just felt like all of a sudden I really needed to figure it out. And again, with a couple of prompts, I put in these ideas that I've had for like 10 years. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
and it's amazing. So my one concern is not so much about taking jobs. It will be about education and how do we still have art history, design history, but sustainability in terms of where are all these images being stored and how can we edit them? Can we delete the ones that come out crappy on our Midjourney page? Because it's all being stored somewhere. So it's global warming from the storage perspective.
Thanks, Scully. We have Michael coming up. Just one thing about, let's wait till next semester. In our department, I'm the chair of the MFA Products of Design department at the School of Visual Arts at SVA in New York City. And so I had sent an email out to faculty just talking about the fact that we actually can't wait until this isn't something we can talk about over the summer and decide what to do in the fall. Students have this, they're using it as Rick says, they're already on Discord. That is the interface for again, one of the most popular platforms, Midjourney. And I had said to faculty, like, we can sort of at least start with two principles. One is autonomy and one is transparency. That if there are faculty who want to welcome this into their classroom, that they should. And if there are faculty who actually want to preclude this from their classroom, then they can do that too. That we're not going to have a policy as a department, but that we will ask for transparency, that the use of these tools, at least in the near term, is acknowledged. And people can actually talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that they have or that they're feeling. Michael, who also, you posted some wonderful questions in the chat. I didn't know if you wanted to leave those in the chat and have people respond, or bring them into the video.
Thanks very much, Alan, and everybody else for being here. And I'll try to throw in on some of this. I'm sorry, for those of you that I was trying to get in earlier, and I was pounding around for about 20 minutes trying to find where the link for this meeting was. So as much as I use technology, I find that I'm still sometimes thrown by something as simple as, okay, I know there's a meeting this morning, but how do I get in? One of the things that we've been seeing in some of the work that's been submitted to us at Dialectic. So I'm the co-managing editor of the scholarly journal for the AIGA DEC. We're working on the next issue that's going to come out this summer, and we're accepting material for what's going to be published this fall. Some of the issues that have been raised by people that are from across the community, and the community extends way beyond the United States. We get stuff in from around the world. And so a couple of the things that I posted in the chat, so are the roles, plural, that people who are using AI and who are experimenting with AI are starting to get into when they have to identify and frame situations that designers who are used to working in the research realm can address, confront, maybe resolve. But we're in a really unique position here, I think, as designers, to use AI as a knowledge constructor. And not that it's the woman, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, who was just speaking, was talking about, plugging a few things in and seeing, or having revealed to her sort of a myriad of ways to approach things from an ideational standpoint. And so I think those of us that are into design research and scholarship, we're looking for ways to use a variety of types of generative AI to help us more effectively, how shall I say, introduce ourselves and then sustain relationships with people from outside design. And what we're also finding is that a lot of those folks have been into AI way longer than we have. So, which is a good thing. I'm not meaning to sound pejorative there. We're starting to do some things, at least here at UNT, but also, again, what we're seeing in Dialectic, there's a lot of designers that are starting to be asked to beta test a variety of versions of AI technology. So we're beta testing Galileo AI. And I don't know if any of those of you who are involved in the user experience, user interface, and interaction design realms are starting to use this. But there's some pretty amazing things that it can start to do based on working with fairly simple prompts. So I guess what I'm throwing out there, I'll try to summarize this. I'm trying not to be overly chatty here, is just to have us as a community think about how AI will play roles, plural, as we work to reach outside of our discipline and work with other kinds of researchers and scholars to construct new knowledge and roles that AI, again, will play with that. And then the other one would be sort of part and parcel with that. How will it help us facilitate collaborative efforts as we work with not just the people on our university campuses, but the people that many of us work with in our communities, as we endeavor to instigate and sustain positive community change. One last thing I'll throw in, and part of this is just me having an editor's hat on, I think it's really, really important for us as an education community to pay really careful attention about what's happening and what's not happening in state and federal governments with regard to AI. There are not a lot of people in my state government here in Texas who understand AI very well. There are not a lot of people in Washington who do either. And as designers, we're uniquely positioned. So is this another time for AIGA DEC to step up and make our voices heard in state governments and at the federal level with regard to where AI is going and what can be done and what we need to think about and what we need to be leery of? And it's time for me to stop talking.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. Was there another hand up? I actually don't know how to bring up a window that shows the order of the hands. And the order of the hands could be the name of this new book.
It should show up in the participants. Alan, if you open up the participants window.
I can help keep track of it too, Alan. No worries. There aren't any other hands at the moment.
Oh, no. Okay, maybe some other voices that we haven't heard from yet. Please jump in.
I'll chime in. This is Victor again. I recognize the fact I'm excited about the possibilities of AI, and I'm encouraged about a lot of the things that I've heard in the past couple of days. I am still very hesitant to adapt it into our classes. I think some of the things that Mark had said earlier about ideation and creativity and promoting creativity with the students, without it, is still fresh in my mind. In fact, in my syllabus for the past 2 semesters, I've actually had a statement that says that the students cannot use any AI because a couple of them last semester was the first time it happened in the room, and it turned out to be something that they use as stock photography. So I told them, until we can figure out some issues, including the issue of copyright, because unlike some of the analogies that we've made with photography or something else, this is probably the first technology that goes from an image bank of existing illustrators, for instance, and people are making searches to say create something based on the illustration style of whoever it is, right? And it's creating something that could be close. It still has a lot of kind of blurriness and 6 fingers or whatever it is, so it doesn't quite look right, but we're not that far we're not that far from something being really, really close. So it's not so much that it's taking jobs specifically, as much as it's like taking jobs or taking opportunities by sampling specific artists' styles or whatever, some who have passed, but some who are still working. And that's what troubles me, as to how we can kind of like put reins on that. So somebody doesn't think it's like, all right, we're ideating with this image, so I'm just only going to use it as ideation. But then if I change whatever percent or whatever they have in their belief system is that they could change, that will make it unique enough so it doesn't hamper on anybody's copyright. So those questions are just kind of like in my head. And anybody else, I think Lisa has her hand up, so I'll just kind of.
Yeah, and just to jump in here on that specifically, if I may, I mean, I think some of the most interesting journalism right now is happening around copyright, because I mean, there's quite a robust debate. People arguing that with 100 million or 100 billion images, don't flatter yourself. Marianne Banshee is calling this an idiot. Her pieces are really, really wonderful. In the meantime, there are court cases, and I don't think anyone could argue that the lack of consent is true, even if the copyright isn't sort of traceable. What's interesting for me too is, even if you could trace the image and you did consent, if you created something truly repugnant, I'm not sure that you, as the illustrator, sort of source work, would actually want your name on that new piece of artwork. So even if this were settled, I'm not sure how it actually shows up in practice. I think this is fascinating and isn't easily discounted by saying, oh, come on, there's so many images, we can't really trace it. Also, Victor, to your point, we are in infancy time, right? I mean, everything is getting so sophisticated. I would draw your attention again to this guidebook that it talks about data sets. It came up yesterday where people are interested in creating their own data sets of their own work. MoMA has a project in the lobby right now, I'll put a link to it, that pulls from the archive of MoMA images, but with permission. So there are some guardrails around it. Lisa?
Well, so I just wanted to continue on from what Victor was discussing, but that like a lot of these issues aren't new. For over a decade, I've been having the conversation in the classroom about copyright, the right to use images, ever since we've sort of had Google image search, right? Students can go out and find things, right? And appropriate things. And sometimes they're doing that, I don't want to say maliciously, but right, kind of sneakily. And sometimes they just don't understand, right? And they genuinely are coming to me saying, what's the right thing to do? And as a designer some years ago, I was often asked by a boss, right? And have heard stories from designers about bosses saying, just pull something from Google. Who cares? Who cares if you have the right to use this? So I do think that while sites like Midjourney and DALL-E and the others do represent new challenges, it's more complicated. It really is continuing from the same conversation. As a designer, as a creator, what do I have the right to use under which situations? And we have to be training our students or discussing that with our students in the classroom right away so that they're equipped to make these decisions, hopefully in an ethical way as they go out, right, and make work for the world. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, I think that's great. And something that Alberto had brought up in these earlier conversations is, frankly, this is the last place that this conversation is going to happen, because when our students leave education and they go to the workplace, 3 weeks ago, we were saying they will be pressured to use these tools. Remember how quaint 3 weeks ago, right? These tools will be used. And I'm not sure that a conversation, again, I don't know if it's about ethics. Sure, it's about ethics, but it's also about authorship, right? And craft, and some of these other things that are in some sense, not so debatable. That school is the absolute appropriate place, and so that there is kind of an imperative to we need to get on this just for the conversation to happen, because it is unlikely to happen after school. That and I think that this is what really prompted me to reach out to my own faculty and be like, we're not waiting for the fall. Students are, our second year of students will be gone in the fall. They won't have the opportunity to have this conversation. Who is next with their hand up? Thank you for letting me be a bit of a moderator here. The hard fork. Thanks, Phil, for the links. There's some really, really great links in the chat. We'll copy those out and send them, I think, to the participants.
So Rick, I think you're next.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've done a lot of research. If you watch the Vox video that explains how Stable Diffusion works, where it's deconstructing and reconstructing images on 500 different levels of understanding of what a yellow banana is actually, the isness of objects. And if you take a look at midlibrary.io, its Instagram page, it actually takes the names of all the famous graphic designers and genres and etc., and it uses them only as a prompt and shows you an image that results. Then it takes the same image and does it with 10 different other words. And so you're doing it in the style of an artist. And style is not copyrightable. So what Midjourney is, it's as if Shepard Fairey had made the Obama Hope poster, but had used 1 million images to composite one version of what Obama looks like and then vectorized it. He would have been safe, and any student can take down 5 pictures of Obama, look for a little bit changes in the head position, etc. And in a court of law, you could not hold them up next to each other and say this is a copy of the other.
Again, I think that this is why this is an interesting conversation around authorship versus copyright, which is, I'm not sure that that's actually settleable. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to paint over the really important point you're making, Rick.
Sure.
Because some people would argue if you actually knew how this worked, you wouldn't be so worried about it. But again, I think that there's an interesting conversation around what is it to be sort of a creative force. Mark?
Yeah, so I just want to relate a personal story, because I think that this is where we have to think of the human and the real impact on some of these people, which is, it's going to happen. I agree with you that it's going to happen, but the reality is it's going to upset a lot of people. So a really close friend of mine who's a very established illustrator, he's, older and later in life in his career. He knew nothing about generative AI, any of this generative art thing. So I said, would you come over? I want to show this to you and see what you think about it. I had him come over. We put a prompt in and said, we actually said we want a drawing of the Frank Lloyd Wright Falling Water House in the style of this illustrator. That was literally the prompt. It generated an image that looked exactly like he did it. And he was so astonished. I actually think he was going to start to cry because he said, fuck, this is the end of my career. And the reality is that in the style of is bullshit when it's your career, because a magazine would be happy to have an in the style of piece of artwork if it was copying another illustrator's work. So, that's, when I had that experience, that made me really think of, I'm amazed and excited and I love playing in Midjourney. I'm like, it's a very yin yang situation, but when I saw the kind of true human impact on somebody in their lifelong career, it's a real issue.
I think this pause of silence is good right here, actually.
I think Michael has his hand up.
Hey guys, I want to very much how shall I say, have been affected by some of my own experiences that are similar to what Mark just recounted, and I thank him for sharing that. When it come back to what Alan and a couple of others have talked about with regard to authorship, so one of the things that we're seeing, again, I'm encouraging designers and design educators to work with people in wherever you are, your environments. Get outside of design. The conversations that we're having here are also happening in the social sciences, especially the ones we work with the most, like anthropology, and of course, computer science, tech comm, marketing, business administration. Those of us that are located in universities, I think, a really unique opportunity to reach out, forge, leverage, sustain relationships with others. This needs to be a collectively informed conversation. So I'm on 2 university level committees here at my university that are looking into this. I got an interesting comment that's really stuck in my head. I think it was originally articulated maybe in a New York Times piece by Brad Chen, maybe 3 months ago, talking about how using things like Chat GPT and authorship, or we could say, to aid and abet the creation of an illustration or an identity marker, whatever it is, that if you don't really know what you're looking at, and if you don't have effective conversations with your students and your collaborators, it's like dealing with a very earnest intern who is trying to please you, but who might be lying a lot. And so there's a larger onus of responsibility on us now as educators. And again, I think, just to reiterate what I was saying before, I think it would be really helpful for us to work with other people who can inform design but who are not designers. And it's a two-way street. The traffic across the bridge goes in 2 ways. We reach across to other disciplines, they reach across to us. And I'll close with, once again, iterating. Maybe I'm seeing it in some of my colleagues in UX, IX. I don't know how many others on this call or the Zoom chat are in the UX, IX realm. We're seeing it have profound implications there in terms of just, there are lots of generative AI out there that can generate code and that can generate UI design. And that, you could spit something out to Galileo and say, I need a UI for a dog walking app, and you're going to get one that's pretty credible, which is, I think, very parallel to what Mark was just sharing, just in another aspect of the kind of design work that we're now doing.
Thanks so much, Michael. One question that I wanted to bring in, and again, people can rewind as well, and maybe potentially to extend the conversation from yesterday, just this degree to Mark had touched on a little bit, that teachers teach what they teach, and I think we've all just sort of run into that, and so there may be a kind of a fear of, like, it's already too late for me to understand this. And then what I'm particularly struggling with is like, well, as long as you have a conversation with your students, right? It's just like, well, having a conversation is actually pretty nuanced. And there are a lot of faculty who do not feel that they have the capacity or the grounding or even the experience to facilitate a reasonable contemporary conversation, when a lot of us may feel that our students actually are way ahead of us in these things. And I think that, this has been a perennial sort of struggle, I think, for teachers like forever. But I think in this particular instance, there's a kind of like emergency that I think people feel. Would anybody be interested in talking if they are feeling like, like I feel a lot of pressure about knowing about this, about allowing it or disallowing it, and I don't know actually how to even talk about it, and is it already too late kind of thing. Anybody want to share some of those feelings? I know certainly I've had them. Just reading over the chat here.
Go ahead, Kathleen. Scully, I know you were having trouble with the raising hand, and then we can hear from Marissa.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't use Zoom every day. Now my brain had a big hole in it. I'm not fearful about this. I'm not worried about talking about this. I think I didn't have enough sleep. I think I have to go back and let my brain think again. I'm sorry. I'll come back.
I know we'll definitely come back. I mean, I think there's a question about, asking your students. Like, I think that this is what great teachers do, is they're actually not afraid of bringing things in and asking the students to engage in the conversation. I think that teachers do, in some sense, naturally feel a lot of pressure to facilitate and moderate a conversation. But certainly it ought to be coming from the students. It shouldn't be an I know, you don't know dynamic, at least my personal opinion. Marissa?
Yeah, hi. I teach at a community college, and I actually, I yesterday in a publication design class, just because, students, where they need more content for, they're doing a magazine. And I was like, you can use ChatGPT to just like, just generate, like if you have like your feature article's not long enough or whatever, just like, put it in and generate more. And I'm saying this not having, I haven't actually played with any of this. My husband is a UX designer, and he teaches as an adjunct at Northeastern. And I actually had gotten that idea from him because his students in his UI class, several of them were using ChatGPT to just generate content for them to put in. And that's really as far as it's gone. I mean, I have just even mentioning ChatGPT to my students, which were in Southeastern Massachusetts. It's, fairly economically depressed area. So I'm not like concerned about going in to have a conversation because the students are going to know more than me in this particular instance. And they have been very transparent when they're, sharing things that they're not sure if this is okay or if they should do this with like logo design. It's so tempting to just put in ideas for blah, blah, just like regular in Google, let alone, what we've got going on here. I would love to be part of a conversation if this continues. It would be great. I mean, I definitely feel like I've been caught flat-footed on this, and I've been in academic dismissal hell because we had a cyber attack, and so it's been already a very rocky semester, and then this is just kind of like hit me, and I'm like, gee, at least I could jump on here and start learning a little bit.
Oh, well, don't worry, it's going to totally slow down, so you can catch up.
Oh, thanks. That's reassuring.
Yeah, for sure.
Marissa,
Thank you, Marissa.
Marissa, I would add that maybe the students know more than you on how to use the tool, but I would bet that you're going to be in a better angle to explain for them the implications of the set tools and usages down the road. Last night, a lot of the conversation.
I'm not actually concerned about that. It's just like in my case, they actually also don't know what's going on, but I'm always fine with, I am from the paste up era. So I am totally comfortable with my students often know more about what's going on with the latest technology than me. I don't have a problem with that part. Thank you.
Some great comments in the chat about international students. We have lots of those, and I actually just worked with a student that I teach in another department whose English on the screen was exceptional. And I asked her, you know, what she was doing. Was she working with someone? And she said she was working with AI and had clued me into a platform that I was not aware of. But I have to say she was sheepish about it. She didn't know if I was going to, like, you know, disapprove. And when I said, wow, this is amazing, you should like share this with the other English language learners in the class, you know, she was very surprised at that reaction. So I think that there's a lot of sort of mystery about how students and teachers, you know, interact actually, really fundamentally. Oh, what is the platform translation? It's got a very cute name. Let me look it up. We have just 10 more minutes. I want to be mindful of time. If somebody wants to just completely throw a wrench into this and take the conversation in another place, I would say feel free. Let's go for it.
I think Michael had his hand up first.
I'm trying to let other people go first, and just in case, but maybe not a monkey wrench, Alan, and thank you for offering that opportunity. So I'll go ahead and throw in, and I don't know if this came up before I had a chance to get on or if it came up yesterday. We've kind of danced around it a little bit, but what I'll call the really dark side of AI, and that's sort of looking at how we as designers, as design educators, preparing the next generation of designers, how do we start to position them to effectively question the fact that there's a lot of AI out there that is a threat to people's privacy, and that has the potential, if it's used, let's just say, by bad actors, whatever bad actors means, to do everything from wrecking an infrastructure like our clean water supply, or, you know, sharing personal healthcare information, or getting in and manipulating a market. So those, I think, are conversations that it would be a good idea. Again, working with lots of people from outside design, it's something that I'm starting to hear from colleagues who teach in other areas. And it's actually, sorry, the woman, I think your name is Marissa, you were speaking before about sort of what your students are bringing in and what they're enlightening you to. These are the kinds of things that our students are starting to bring to us. One last thing too, about the writing. Yes, ChatGPT and others can, and I'm somebody who has to edit lots and lots of writing, but it's that there's still an onus on on students and educators to analyze whatever's been written, to use your very human being brain to do that. But anyway, just throwing that in. So I'll close just by saying, hey, the dark side of AI, where do we position ourselves as design educators and professionals to help our students sort of be aware, to be aware that, I mean, I'm thinking of things like facial recognition and how that works and does not work, threats to privacy, threats to infrastructure, those kinds of things.
Thank you, Michael. Rick, I actually just wanted to explicitly thank you, in case people aren't reading in the chat, for sharing all of these resources, this Google Drive folder, not only a PowerPoint, but tons and tons of examples. And I think learning through examples is really, really, you know, one of the best ways to learn, and really, and also your excitement and support for this. Anne?
Hi, I have a wrench. I should have brought it up before. And I wanted to say hi to Marissa. I also teach at community college in Massachusetts, so let's get coffee sometime. But we had a project in class this week where we were doing book covers, and I let them do generate some with using Midjourney. And one woman in my class put in a prompt for beautiful women from 1920s. And of course, guess what kind of beautiful women came up? All white. She's a Black woman. And so we got to have that conversation in class about, you know, how these learning machines work and how the, what kind of data gets put into them and how, hopefully it'll change and the data that's put in is more broad and doesn't, lock out, our population, people, other people. So that was an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I'll link to a nice recent, very popular piece in the New York Times, this notion that it's not a mystery, it's a mirror. Yeah, and what goes into it is exactly what we're getting out of it. Victor? Oh, and Rick?
Thank you. I don't know if this is going to be the monkey wrench, but one of the comments that was made in yesterday's conversations, we've been talking about Midjourney and DALL-E and Galileo and all those, but one of the comments I found interesting yesterday was someone mentioning the other kinds of AI, and I think it kind of goes by to some of the comments that have already been made with it, but some of the other AIs that are really kind of like dangerous in a lot of ways, like Michael was saying, and somebody mentioned deep fakes and how things could be adapted and other things. A couple of years ago, I was at Adobe Max, and if you've ever been to Adobe Max, you know that they bring up a celebrity on stage and they do sneaks where they introduce potential things that might be coming down the road in Adobe. And Jordan Peele was a celebrity, and one of the people introduced this thing where they would take Key's words, they would take a little sample of his voice, and then they could make him say whatever they wanted. And it was super, super realistic. And I remember that audience of like 2,000 people, it was like palpable. I don't know if anybody else was there, but it seemed like palpable where everybody was kind of like cheering for like 10 seconds. That's how good it was. And then all of a sudden it was like, ooh, wait a second. And I think the person on stage actually kind of picked up on the audience. I was like, oh, that's cool, but that's kind of messed up at the same time. And the person on stage was like, but we're working on ways to keep it from being used in a bad way. And I don't know, I mean, maybe Adobe has their hearts in the right place, but I can't imagine everybody has their hearts in the right place. But those other AI forms, as Michael was saying earlier, I think is some of the more concerning ones. I think those are more concerning than maybe the copyright issues that we as illustrators might be having. But I don't know if that was a monkey wrench you were asking for, Alan, but that's what was on my mind.
Yeah, welcoming. I mean, I think this is great because, again, an hour is like, not sufficient at all. But I think it's interesting to get a lot of voices in and to hear some of the things that are being surfaced in their lives. I think I found the New York Times article. It may be paywalled, but give that a try. 3 minutes to go. Lisa.
I just really quickly wanted to respond. Patricia had mentioned we need to do a conference for educators about this. We're working on trying to do at least a session, if not more than that, for the upcoming National Design Conference in New York City. So look for that. That is on our brains because we understand how important this is. So we promise more to come soon, but we have been thinking about it. So thank you, Patricia.
Can I please piggyback on Lisa's comment? I did shoot a hand up. I put this in the chat, very much in line with what Lisa is saying. And I put it in the chat. There's been a whole lot shared during this discussion that I think has been very broadly informed and intelligently articulated. I'm going to make a shameless plug for some of you to consider submitting work for publication in Dialectic. Either this summer or in this winter's issue. We're preparing both right now. So Dialectic is your journal and our journal, and but this is we might even be able to get a whole issue out of this, and maybe that's something that we should be thinking about. But please consider submitting in one of our 8 categories some of what you guys have been sharing and talking about during this Zoom.
I think might even be able to get an entire issue out of this is the understatement of the hour. Thanks for the humility, Michael. I think it would be an extraordinary special issue, and not even special, just an issue that actually needs to happen. Mark, I'm feeling something from you. I'm looking at your thumbnail. I'm like, I think Mark has something to say here at the end.
Really? You think that,
Yeah,
that makes me,
I'm feeling that.
let me go back to Chat GPT and they'll tell me what to say. I think that, like, for me, like I say, I find it exciting to be on the front end of this discussion, and the fact that this, like, when I started developing this AI class with a colleague at Parsons, they were the experts. I knew nothing about it. And, we wrote our syllabus before we even knew that was way before Chat GPT even existed. So it's been really exciting to kind of be a part of this process and to be able to apply it to the classroom in real time. But also, it's also been super interesting to have the conversations with my students around the challenges that everybody's brought up, certainly around bias. Our students picked up on that immediately. The one thing that I'm a little, I think too, and in 5 years, when these young people are out in the world doing their thing, they're not going to be aware of the transition that we are aware of. Like I said, I started doing PayStep, and now, I can see, because I have friends who are going to be negatively impacted by these developments. I can tell that my students, they do not understand the profound impacts that this is having on the industry because they're young, they don't know. It's just another cool program that's really fun to use. So, and they can't kind of embody the ethical, the impacts that we can, because we have, experience in hindsight. So that's something that I'm really cognitive. I always feel like I'm like shaking them, like you have no idea what this means. And they're like kind of shrugging their shoulders and like, yeah, it's really cool. So I don't have any answers, but I'm excited. Like I say, I think it's amazing and fantastic and terrifying all at the same time.
I had a feeling. Thank you so much, Mark, for letting me put you on the spot. Rick, can we get one last dose of enthusiasm from you? And then I think we're going to look to the DEC to wrap this up. And I'm not sure if you also wanted to make some extra time for people who wanted to stick around like yesterday.
I'd be more than happy to share my screen and show the PowerPoint. I'm available to anybody that wants me to come speak in your classrooms. I feel like I'm going to be the Johnny Appleseed of this thing. I would love to have at a conference maybe someone to be the devil's advocate for all of my thoughts, because maybe that's something that I don't know as I go headlong into
the DEC Smackdown.
Yeah,
live in New York City in the fall.
Yeah, somebody who's really, really smart at this, and because I'm prepped, I've spent an equal amount of time watching YouTube videos about the subject and reading New York Times and everybody else and Forbes, and every Wednesday actually on in Discord, the owner of Midjourney, the founder, David Holtz, does 4-hour long interviews, and he's quite charming and very diminutive and just a spectacular speaker on all things Midjourney. A lot of it's about geeking out about their products, but also the future of it. And his idea that it is an imagination engine, that it's meant to be used as a tool for having fun and for playing. And most people make, busty manga characters from it, or they try to make Batman into a Simpson or something like that. So to be using it professionally is a whole other level of thing. And I think that's what I'd love to show my students, is that, because students have a lack of imagination today, because they're spoon-fed and mediated to, instead of being creators of content, I think it opens up their idea that they can iterate off of the entire library of all visuals of all time and start to play with an imagination of, what if I had MC Escher and Van Gogh architecting a house? What would it look like? I think it opens up ideations and directions, what I call the psychedelic trip that you need to take when you're starting to come up with an idea. You go off to the deep end and you start to think of things that no one except on drugs would ever think of. And that's what it feels like. It's a drug for ideation. I think that kind of sends us to a new place. That's why I'm excited about it.
We got to end with drugs for ideation. Rick, thank you so much. Lisa and Victor, sort of, oh, we dropped out here. Thank you so much for having me today. This was a really, really great conversation. I don't know if you want to bring it home. Alberto, are you still here?
Alberto had to drop off, but I'll go ahead
Okay.
and sign off for everybody. Thank you
Yeah,
so much,
so-
Alan. We appreciate you and Helen Armstrong yesterday with facilitating this conversation. We appreciate everyone for joining us today and yesterday, and really giving us your insights and your thoughts. And hopefully we can lead the conversation as we continue discovering this growing technology. If you want to stick around for a few more minutes, I think we can stick around for like 10 more minutes. I think can we go ahead and shut off the recording now so we can end it there. But if